Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zack Rosenblatt, and Marissa Dunn.
Can't wait!
Hey everyone, training camp rolling along, one preseason game down. Welcome in to the Can't Wait podcast, what will be a somber edition of the show. Please subscribe on YouTube. If you're watching us live, give us the thumbs up. If you listen on Apple, Spotify, after the fact, great, subscribe there too. Tell your friends, all of that stuff. We're going to start the episode today with a moment of silence in honor of the end of one of the great eras in Jets history, the Chris Streveler era. Bow your heads. All right. And with that, we move on, Zack. I know it's been a hard week for you, but just dealing with your mentions on Twitter alone probably took a lot out of you. But, you know, it's no secret that we were a pro Chris Streveler podcast, the greatest of all pro Chris Streveler podcasts.
Easily top 5 Chris Streveler podcast.
Yes. Released this week, cleared waivers, actually on the IR for the Jets, but seemingly it seems like his time in pads for the Jets has come to an end. So share your favorite Streveler moments in the chat section. We'd love to hear them. We'll get some of them on the screen. We have our own top 5 that we're going to go through as well. But just, how did your week go, Zack, from when the news broke to you being overwhelmed on social media and just like personally dealing with the news yourself?
So the tweets are actually how I even saw the news happen. It was kind of like, how a player finds out he was cut on Twitter kind of thing. That's kind of how it felt for me. I forget, I was doing something where I think I was cleaning my apartment. So my phone was in the other room and I get over to my phone and I have just like, I open Twitter and all these people tagging me. Are you okay, Zack? Zack? Are you okay, Zack? Zack Blatt. I'm like, what is happening? And then I finally see what happened. And that was, it was jarring. Like first that scared me for sure. And then it saddened me, of course. And it was, he didn't have a great game the other day. It turned out he hurt his wrist at some point. So obviously that's the only reason why his throws were inaccurate. I think he hit his wrist on like a helmet or something like that.
That's obviously the only reason that his throws were inaccurate.
I mean, that's the only one I can think of.
Yeah.
He didn't get to have another legendary preseason. Saleh called it last year like a Hall of Fame preseason. And, we thought maybe he'd just be enshrined while he was there in Canton last week. But unfortunately, God had other plans, as they say. So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. It sucks. He is, we're very pro Chris Streveler. Our group text message has his name in it,
and his picture,
we updated it. Maybe we jinxed it, changing the photo. Maybe that's
a good point. We did change the photo last week.
I don't know. I thought, we'll get into it a little more here as you go through the top 5. I thought he would stick around on the practice squad. It became clear at a certain point that Tim Boyle was always going to be the QB3 probably. But I thought he could stick around the practice squad, extra arm. Maybe you call him up, do a little Taysom Hill package for him, But, now we have to just suffer and move on without Chris Streveler in our Jets' lives, at least for the time being.
So we had a rule last year that every single episode of Can't Wait, at some point we mentioned Chris Streveler. I think we're probably going to have to move away from that.
Oh, I know. Some people are saying this is like when little Sebastian died. That's a great reference.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's gonna be hard now. I mean, my goal is to try and get him on here. I do have a connection with him, so I'm hoping I could get him to come on. We had talked about at the end of the season, me and him talked about having him on, and the summer kind of got away from us. And I was traveling, you were traveling, but we'll try and get him on here. We got to get him for some thoughts.
Probably
see if he knows about the kind of cult army we've helped create with his presence here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's go through our top 5 Chris Streveler moments. Throw in any others that you're thinking of at home as we go through these. But number 5 is actually the most recent one, and it is, in fact, the current picture of our group text with you, me, and Marissa Dunn, our usual producer. And here it is. Chris Streveler at the Hall of Fame last week in full old school gear in Canton, because he should have played back then.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he was a man out of time a little bit. He belonged. Look, he just that just fits him so perfectly. The football, everything, and they didn't need to throw it as far back then, so he would have fit right in. So, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that it was a very funny photo. I tagged him in an Instagram thing about it, and he laughed at it. He was very popular among his teammates. His teammates loved him. Taylor said, "I am Strevastated." That's genius. That should have been the title of this episode. We are.
I can change that.
But we have a few more things to go through. But one thing I always did notice, his energy was always crazy high. Unlike any quarterback, he was always getting really amped up during practice. Everything you always saw him getting the most amped out of everybody on the sideline. If you knew he was playing, you could see him getting. I think somebody tweeted a photo at us. Or maybe it was me, or a video of him on the sideline getting amped up and ready to go out before the game. So yeah, he had that energy in his team. He was very popular in the building, I would say.
I'm going to leave this photo up as we go through the rest of the top 5, just so people can enjoy it if you're watching us on YouTube, and to describe it if you're just doing the audio. He was at Canton last week. He's got the old school shoulder pads on, the old leather helmet with no face mask, and the old football that wasn't really the shape you would want to be throwing back then, when it was just mostly a running sport. But he's in the full pass pose. It's magical. That's all I can say about it. All right, number 4 on the list, and 3 of the 5 are the preseason from 2022 because really that was peak Chris Streveler.
Legendary.
Preseason game 2022 versus the Giants, 10 of 13, 96 yards, 2 touchdowns. Jets win 31-27. That was the first one? No, the last one.
I believe that was the last one last year. I think he had a touchdown to Calvin Jackson at the end, who was another training camp guy last year. Yeah, it was just it was a perfect capper because it was 3 games in a row where the same thing happened. Where we'll get into the other ones, but it was he made the end of these preseason games fun. He would all right, and then it got to a point where all right, we kind of got to watch what happens now. So
Streveler time. All right, number 3, 2022 preseason versus the Philadelphia Eagles. 6 of 9, 62 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jets come from behind again, 24-21 over the Eagles.
I mean, not even much to add. It was just a classic Strev performance, come from behind. That's why, when he came in the other day in the Hall of Fame game, Calvin Jackson Boy Green pointed out, Calvin Jackson had a game winner in 2 of those games. That's why people were very mad when Calvin got cut last year.
Yeah.
He's one of those that people kind of forget about pretty quickly.
Preseason star.
That was another Strev comeback for sure.
Number 2, I think the best of the comebacks, preseason versus the Falcons, 8 of 11, 119 yards. Actually threw an interception in this one, but also had a touchdown. And the Jets rally for 21 unanswered points to win 24-16.
I mean, this one was amazing because he had been signed, and so they had Mike White, Joe Flacco, and Zach Wilson, obviously, and he was the 4th quarterback. He was not getting team reps in practice because usually it's first team, second team, third team, and he wasn't competing for the third team job like he was this year. So he wasn't stealing reps from Mike White, who was the 3rd stringer at the time. So he didn't get any reps at practice until the day of the game or something like that. And then I think that's when Zach Wilson got hurt against the Eagles. So maybe I'm confusing the games. Maybe was the first game the Eagles game, or was the first game
Eagles was the first game?
Okay, I
Eagles
messed it up.
Was the first game.
Okay, so I would have had the Eagles and Falcons flip flop. Actually, is what I would say. Because the Eagles game is when he came in without any practice and led a comeback. But the Falcons one was also great. I mean, I clearly don't know which one I'm talking
about. We all remember this one, though. Number 1 on the list, week 16 last season versus Jacksonville. I think it was Thursday night, right? It was prime time. It was an absolute disaster. Maybe the low point of the season as far as the Jets go. As they lose the game 19-3. Zach Wilson pulled. But for a brief moment, for a brief little stretch, Jets fans were given this glimmer of hope as Strev came in 10 of 15 for 90 yards. Almost drove them for points, but did not. But there was talk about I guess what we should talk about is it was at home and the feeling in the stadium. Zach,
oh my, it was wild. I'm sure some people who are listening were at the game. First, people were cheering Zach Wilson getting taken out of the game, which I'm sure was tough for Zach to swallow, and he was benched for a practice squad guy. And the cheer, like Boy Green just referenced it. The pass he hit CJ Uzama on, which was like a 50-yard gain, very, very underthrown. Should have been a
terrible
long touchdown.
pass. Terrible.
But it was the loudest cheers I maybe heard all season because he completed a pass, and it was Streveler, I think, was like honestly part of it. I had a lot of support both in the press box and on Twitter when he came in. The crowd was like going crazy. Like it was one of the weird, like it's almost going to be something that doesn't even sound real when we talk about it in the future. Like, remember when in a game with playoff implications, that guy Chris Streveler went in and the whole crowd was giving him a standing ovation, essentially? Like it was wild. And the offense was moving with him, which it wasn't with Zach Wilson, which is why they kept him in. Like the offense, whatever you want to say about, his throwing ability down the field, he was running, he was getting some short passes, and he almost led them up the field. He couldn't quite get them to the end zone, and whatever, you can go through the issues on offense, but it was wild. It's gonna be a game that even beyond my attachment to this folk hero, it was just like a weird moment in Jets history that I feel like fans are gonna remember for a while.
Yeah, and if people don't remember it, the throw to Uzama,
it was bad.
He had to come back for it. He was wide open, running free, and he basically had to stop and almost like dive back for it to make the play. But none of that matters. It was still a 50-yard game.
Yes.
And
preseason Hall of Famer Chris Streveler, regular season MVP in our hearts.
Yep.
You will be missed. Thank you for all you gave us in this last year.
Hopefully we can get you on the pod. All right, let's move on to more not more serious, because
we went 11 minutes without talking about joint practice, Hard Knocks, or the Hall. Well, we talked about the Hall of Fame game a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that was a while ago now, and to be honest, the most exciting thing was the lights going out.
Yeah.
Well, that's not true.
Well,
one Zack Wilson throw, but we'll get to that I actually have that as a note from Hard Knocks, so we'll get to the Zack Wilson throw in Hard Knocks. But joint practices, let's get to that. That is the most timely thing. Zach, we didn't even mention that you were actually in South Carolina with the team, checking out the joint practices with the Carolina Panthers. I'm not sure if it's hotter there or in my apartment right now, where it was so nice this morning that I have the fan going, but then this time of day it just got hot and I can't turn the air conditioning on because it'll mess up the podcast. So podcaster problems. I'm dying right now. But anyway, how is it in South Carolina before we get into the football?
It's hot. So as hot as it is by you, the humidity's worse here.
That's
and I have become a very big baby in this weather. I used to be able to handle it better, I thought. I feel like it's gotten worse. I don't know, global warming and stuff. But Antoine Staley, who covers the Jets for the New York Daily News, is always giving all of us crap because we're always complaining about how hot it is, and he like grew up in the South. So we were complaining. He's like, this is nothing. What are you guys talking about? But I was sweating a lot. And so that makes me cranky. Especially I was a genius and I didn't eat anything all day either until I had barbecue at 3 p.m. for lunch, which was delicious. I had bad barbecue yesterday. I won't name the place. I went to Moe's today, which was very good.
Carolina barbecues.
Yeah. But yeah, so South Carolina, we're in Spartanburg, which I don't know the area that well. It doesn't seem like there's like a lot to do here. I've always wanted to go to Charleston, but yeah, joint practices, like Impact Football, are always fun because you get to see, for us, like we're in it for so long. Like we always talk about on here, it's hard to tell sometimes if like a certain group is good or if a certain group is actually bad, or if they're just going against, the right or wrong matchup against their teammates, like the offensive line, defensive line conundrum or whatever. And you actually get to see them against another team. Today was a very intense practice. I think tomorrow is going to be a lighter one. So I think it's good we're doing this today. I always enjoy covering joint practices because you get to see another look. The tough part, the way it's set up at the Panthers facility, like where we're allowed to stand, is we're on one of the end zone sidelines. And depending on which direction they're going, we can it's really hard to see what's going on sometimes. So it was a struggle to for some moments to, especially the end, the move the ball drill, which we'll talk about because it was kind of a disaster for the Jets. It was hard to see a lot of stuff, which is kind of frustrating, but and there's the challenge of, all right, am I going to watch the offense against the other team's defense, or am I going to watch the defense, the other team's offense? It felt like the right move was offense with Aaron Rodgers, and I feel like there's more questions on that side than there is on the other. And watching Aaron Rodgers is different than watching Zach Wilson was last year. So, although Bryce Young, I was intrigued by, but it was a lot of it was fun. I always enjoy these, and I think there was a good amount of Jets fans in the crowd. By the way, I was pretty surprised. They made the trip. Saw a lot of cheeseheads. So it was an interesting day for sure.
You get to see it's better than the preseason in a lot of ways, because the preseason you're just seeing the position battles and backups for the most part, whereas you're seeing the starters here. All right, let's get into what was happening and not happening. What wasn't happening was Sauce Gardner practicing.
Yeah.
So give us an update there. It is an injury. What's the report?
Yeah, so Salah said that he felt something, and they practiced on Tuesday back in New Jersey. He said he felt something in his quad, so they held him out of precaution today. I'm guessing that would mean they'll hold him out tomorrow just to be completely safe. But you never like to hear that. Like, as we were trying to figure out among the beat writers if Sauce ever missed a practice last year. I don't think he did. Not 100% on that, but do not think he did. So it's something to keep an eye on. I wouldn't be concerned, although you never know with timeline. Salah even joked. He's like, he said Eric, who's the PR guy for the Jets, he's like, he always gets mad at me for giving timelines for injuries. And I think we all would agree that he probably should avoid doing it unless he's like actually definitive, but whatever. He's the coach. I'm not. And he's always optimistic is the reason why. Like, he's always like erring on the side of optimism. And sometimes
right.
The Mackay thing last year was the worst example of that, obviously. So yeah, you have that. And then you have Carl Lawson, who, he said the same thing about him, about it. He has a lower back issue. I think he said some tightness. He's now missed 3 straight practices since Salah first said that it was just a precaution. So again, that's something to keep on. I'm not even sure if Carl Lawson traveled with them. I don't think I saw him on the sideline. So, and if it's a back injury, I guess that, as somebody pointed out, Carl Lawson's injury. I wasn't covering the Jets in 2021 with those Packers practices, but I was talking to Brian Costello today. He was telling me about how crazy it was seeing Carl have that injury and how they everybody knew immediately that it was season ending and how sad it was. And it was in Green Bay. And it's been a lot has changed for the Jets since that moment. But I get the fear, especially because this was a contact practice with pads and nobody was tackling to the ground or anything. There wasn't really any fights either, which was disappointing. But anyway, injury wise, those two. Garrett Wilson did return to practice on a limited basis, so that's team good. Drills, but that's positive. Chaz Surratt, we're going to get into, was out, and Bryce Hall was also out. So Brandon Eccles got the starting job at corner, and he played really well, actually.
Got a pick, right? Eccles had an interception.
Pick 6,
yeah. So that's encouraging because he's had his struggles this summer. So good to see depth there as far as how he's doing on making the roster. All right, do you want to start with the good or the bad? Let's start with the good, because you said you watched mostly the offense. So
yes,
or actually that would be the bad.
Well, that's fair. So we can
the offensive line is what we think it is, right? Is that fair to say?
Yes, that would qualify as bad. Yeah. Yes, Shardell River says Jamie Sherwood was in a little scuffle today. I didn't see that side, so maybe there was one in the defense. There was like a small one on offense, but I couldn't really see who was involved. But yeah, anyway, the offense. One thing I wrote this in my observations, which are on The Athletic, and I hope you guys read them because they're pretty in depth. Rodgers is like, if he's frustrated with something, I think he can't help himself but like say how he feels about it is what I've noticed, and I'm sure that'll be more pronounced when the games happen. But he said it was a pretty good practice. The run blocking was good, and then he said we had some issues in the pass blocking, and then with some follow-ups, he went more specifically off the edge was the issue, which AKA the tackle position. We've talked about it multiple times. I feel like, I guess we've only done like 1 or 2 pods since the start of camp, but I've written about it. I've heard some concerns about it, both in the fan base and people around the team and stuff. Like there's concern about the offensive tackle. Max Mitchell and Billy Turner have been getting all the first team reps. They've been switching back and forth. Max Mitchell was at left tackle today. I don't know that they should keep switching them back and forth necessarily, although it's tough because they kind of both need to be ready for both spots. I just don't see Max as a left tackle, really. And if I'm putting money on it, I'd say Billy Turner is probably the favorite to start, which I know is going to fire up some fans. Max Mitchell had a rough day. He went against Brian Burns a lot, which, Brian Burns will do that to even really good offensive linemen. He's one of the best edge rushers in the league. I should say that, I think Connor McGovern kind of alluded to this, and I've heard from people around the team that, they weren't necessarily scheming around the Panthers. They didn't really have time to scheme for the Panthers leading into a joint practice. So I don't think they were like adjusting necessarily to Brian Burns. I think they would have approached it differently if it was like a game situation. So in theory, it would have been a little better, but they didn't do that. So the offense wasn't really be able to do as much as they maybe should have, because, there was a play where he got around Max Mitchell so fast that he like tapped Rodgers on the back and the play had to end because, they had to call a sack, because the Jets haven't been calling sacks throughout camp. Right. And that was just a consistent thing. The offensive line was just they were letting things get blown up, especially around the edge with Rodgers in there. There was some drops early in practice in 7-on-7, which doesn't involve offensive linemen. And yeah, so I don't know. It was concerning. And then the 2-minute drill, which I said I couldn't see like everything perfectly, but I do know that first play Rodgers completed a short pass to Michael Carter. Second place, he got sacked quickly. Third play, he threw an incompletion while pressured. So it was 3 and out during a 2-minute drill. And everybody was kind of annoyed by that. Connor McGovern put it 100% on the offensive line, and I kind of agree with him. And the concern for me is mostly on the outside. I've been saying this the whole time. I'm not as concerned as necessarily everybody, because I really think once Dwayne Brown is healthy and playing, that they'll be in much better shape. And I do think if you have 4 solid offensive linemen, you can survive. And if there's one weak spot, then you kind of learn to live with it. And I do think they'll have that, depending on what you feel about Lake and Tomlinson. But to this point in camp, it's the biggest concern on this team. If they do not protect Aaron Rodgers, this team is not going to contend for the Super Bowl, and they're going to have even trouble making the playoffs. Like that, it's that big of a concern. I think it's too early to panic, as I've said. This was the first time they went against somebody and the starters played, and it was still bad. And so I think that's reason for concern. I personally, at a certain point, I'm not saying I'm ready to do this yet, because you need to see what Dwayne Brown looks like and all that. But at a certain point, do you consider putting AVT at right tackle, and maybe once Tittman's ready, you can do a Tittman and McGovern together thing. But yeah, so that was the concern. On the flip side, on a positive side, I should say Mekhi Becton, who again has only gotten snaps at left tackle, so it doesn't seem like he's actually in the right tackle conversation, I would say. He didn't finish the practice, which, as I've been saying, until he finishes a practice, a game, gets all his game reps that he's supposed to, like not checking out after 7 snaps, they're not going to consider him for first team reps. It's just not, they need to know that he can play the entire day. But he looked really good, I thought, today. He blocked, I forget the guy's name. There's a backup edge rusher.
First time that he's really looked good in your mind?
Not the first time. No, he's looked like solid at times. He just hasn't like gotten through a whole practice is kind of the main issue I've had. There are definitely days where he's not been good, I should say. Like, it's not been all good. But today he was good. There was a block he had on a run where he like stuffed the guy into the ground. Like it was an old school Mekhi Becton pancake. And that's kind of thing that gets everybody hyped up. But I still have concerns about the stamina and the confidence playing on the knee, which Saleh has reiterated over and over again. And so until they have confidence in that, I don't think he's in consideration to start. And he probably won't be for a while until that changes. So I think that's a positive sign. The fact that he hasn't gotten any right tackle reps makes it pretty clear what position he's going to be playing for this team. If Dwayne Brown's not ready to go in week 1, maybe they consider him. I still think they lean more towards Mitchell and Turner for whatever that's worth. But yeah, so the offensive line remains the biggest question mark, and it's unfortunate because, that was the biggest question mark coming into the offseason too. You're on mute.
Other than the 2-minute drill gone bad, were there some bad moments or good moments for Rodgers?
Yeah, there were some good throws. He had some quick throws to CJ Uzomah, and Uzomah made some good plays on them. His best throw was, Alan Lazard got behind Xavier Woods, the Panther safety. He was pretty much wide open. It might have been just a mess up by Woods, but Rodgers hit him, and it would have been like a 60-yard touchdown, I think. And I think he had 2 touchdowns in 7-on-7 combined with 11-on-11, and both were to Lazard. He threw to Lazard a lot. And yeah, he did not have any like bad throws. Like he was fine. It was just a problem of pressure and drops and stuff like that. Like the offense around him had a little more trouble. But yeah, he was okay. And then Zach Wilson, I would say, didn't have a great day. There was he had a no-look throw in 7-on-7. It looked like it was kind of on the money to Kenny Yeboah. It looked like it hit off his hands and was intercepted. It was a risky throw. I don't know that he should have done it like that. He should have done the regular throw. And I don't know like if the defender got their hands on it, but that was picked off, and he got picked off at the very end of practice. In his 2-minute drill session, he had 3 incompletions, and 1 of them was an interception. So I would say not his best day after he had a few good days in a row.
All right, let's switch it over to the other side of the ball, the defense, because it's interesting on the offense because our hope was the reason the offensive line had struggled was because the defensive front is so good. So how did this defensive front fare against another team's offensive line?
So I didn't get to watch all of the defense because I was focused on the offense. But from what I did see, Brandon Echols, as we alluded to, had a pick 6 off Bryce Young. Tony Adams forced a fumble. I don't know who it was on, but he continues to have a great camp. And when the glimpses I got, it did seem like the D-line was having a pretty good day. And I think up until the 2-minute drill, I think the defense was probably winning against the Panthers offense. And then Bryce Young kind of pretty efficiently and impressively worked his way up the field, which is like quick throws, taking what was given to him. He has a great arm for a guy who's as small as he is. Like he just like flick of the wrist and throw it pretty far and hard. He did impress me. Adam Thielen beat Jordan Whitehead pretty badly on like the second play for a big gain, and the Panthers wound up settling for a field goal. So, ultimately they scored in a 2-minute drill, which in the game situation you can't really have. So it was bad to end the practice, but not surprisingly, the defense isn't really my concern right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's move along to Hard Knocks, because last night was the debut, and I've said this before, I haven't watched Hard Knocks in many years. So excited to kind of get back into it and hear as Aaron Rodgers put it, voice of God again. And we'll get into Leaf Shriver's role and all of that. But I thought it was a solid episode. I thought starting with Joe Namath off the top, like right from the start, was probably easy, but also perfect. And kind of going from there, you had the cuts back and forth before the real open between Namath and Rodgers on the practice field and the red shirts.
Yeah.
Maybe some goosebumps for Jets fans there seeing that. And then like just from the very start, and we're just on the open now before we really get into the episode, besides Aaron Rodgers, the very next Jet pictured on Hard Knocks was Michael Clemens with the Lucille bat getting out of his truck, which I thought was awesome. You see this big guy, and like if you're not a Jets fan, you're probably like, who is that? So I thought the open was really good. Let's get into like just favorite moments, and then we'll do MVPs of the episode too. But I thought from the start, it was pretty good. Zach, I didn't think there was any surprises. They hit all the main topics we expected in episode 1, which was Sean Payton's comments. We already got into the Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson practice relationship, which I thought they would kind of hang on to a little bit because that's just going to be there the whole time, right? So there weren't surprises. They hit what I thought they should have. What were your first impressions of Hard Knocks?
Yeah, I would say my thoughts are kind of twofold. Number one, it's like when you watch it, it's just so clear how like well done and well produced that show is. Like they have the state of the art, everything looks good, sounds good. I ultimately I shouldn't have been, but I think initially I was surprised at how like involved Rodgers did wind up being. He seemed to very much love all the focus and attention he got on this. Like I said in my takeaways, that you could have called it a Hard Knocks Aaron Rodgers because it was about him, and then there was just stuff around him. Even there was a part of the beginning of the episode with Garrett Wilson on his way to the facility, and he was just talking about Rodgers, and the way they transitioned to Sauce was kind of like through that lens, and it was cool to see Sauce's graduation. And the solid stuff, the speeches, I think, it's always fun seeing the coaches behind the scenes. You see Jeff Ulbrich, and he likes to say the F word a lot. And I'm a big fan of Jeff and his personality. Didn't see Ron Middleton yet, which was surprising in terms of like assistants. But so I think those were all positive. I think the thing that surprised me the most, and again, it's only been the first episode. There's still, I guess, 5 more or 4 more. I can't even remember how many episodes are in the season, but they didn't do like anything on the bottom of the roster, guys. Like they kind of like threw in something at the end about Chaz Surratt, which was a cool moment, but it almost felt like they did that to be like, oh crap, we haven't done anything on anybody but the like 3 stars of this team. So I think, they clearly wanted to draw people in, which is probably why they did that. Everybody watching the first episode, you give them what they want in terms of the stars. But yeah, so going forward, I guess I don't know how much more there's to show about like Sauce and Garrett necessarily. So maybe
that segment was actually a little disappointing to me because I maybe it's not there. I wanted to see a little more like just interaction between those guys. There was one cool moment where Wilson was like you were tugging on my shirt there down low. That was really
cool,
good.
yeah.
Basically complimenting him on how good he was at it. And he was like,
brief,
I thought you would knock it off. And like that was cool, but I wanted to see more. I wanted to see like trash talking, which I don't know if they actually do or not, but like,
I'm sure they do. But yeah, you're right. It was a pretty brief moment because it seemed like they were trying to get to other stuff. And so in the future, I think the most common thing I've seen, and I even tweeted this, is that Michael Clemens, and I should say, and maybe I'm not supposed to say this, but I heard a rumor that Michael Clemens might have been mic'd up by HBO at some point. So I think he might be featured more in the future.
They were just teasing him.
There was somebody else. There's somebody else that somebody told me. I think it was a low key guy. I can't remember who it was. I'm blanking. There was somebody else too that I think is going to get more pub.
There was a few Strev sightings, but nothing big.
A few Strev sightings.
Probably
one thing that surprised me, and again, I guess they can come back to it, is there was no Breece Hall even mentioned, which is
that's going to be a big chunk of these, I think. Yeah,
and like among the like undrafted guys and intriguing guys, it seems like they're probably going to try and do something on Chasserot, because I don't think they would have thrown that in there unless he was going to become like a part of it.
You'd think he was a star of this team going.
Oh yeah, Salah loves him apparently. I had no idea.
Yeah. He said, quote, "That's my guy." Then he said, "He's so fast." And there was some F-word bombs in there as well. And he said, "That guy is so good." Just talking about Serrata.
And keep in mind that the Jets get like right of first refusal for like what shows up on the show.
Right. So they could have,
let's get the Chasserot thing in there. Or I guess they could be trying to trick somebody into claiming him or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd say that would be like the negative side of things. I'm curious to see. I feel like Tony Adams is a guy that's primed to get like featured because he's been the talk of camp. Maybe Jason Brownlee, I think, was the other one I heard that might be featured on a future episode. And I know fans are obsessed with him. So, hey, look who's in the chat.
Hey, Marissa made it.
Say
hi to Marissa if you're joining us on.
She said she needed to pop in.
She's going to stard up. She'll be joining us at some point, actually, on the pod too. But there she is. So everybody can stop listening to us.
By the way, someone who did appear on Hard Knocks briefly, Mr. Michael Dunn.
Oh yeah, quick.
Showed him after the Hall of Fame game or whatever.
Walking by in the background. There was some cool behind the scenes type stuff with the players. There was one. They were talking about going to a Broadway show, and it was just fun because they were like, "I got a suite," and they were like, "Dude, there's no suite." Well, they're more comfortable seats. I don't know. And then they're just giving each other crap. And then Smart said,
"Yeah, that's what I was about to say." So it started because it was Solomon Thomas. He was like, "I didn't invite you because I knew you would just talk the whole time," and then Intentional Smart's like, I mean, most people that are in here have probably watched it, but Intentional Smart was like, "No, I can be sophisticated. I like charcuterie boards." He said, Charcuterie boards. Yeah. And I thought after that point, he for sure would, because as I predicted, he was one of the, in my preview for Hard Knocks, I wrote him as a candidate to get featured because he has a fun personality. They didn't even go back to him the rest of the episode. Like, come on, clearly he's like, it's like there was one year, forget what player it was or what team, but there was somebody who like didn't believe that dinosaurs are real or something. And they kept going back to that. Like, you got to keep going back to Tansel Smart, is what I think.
Before we get to MVPs, one thing I thought was interesting was, so they showed the play, the Zach Wilson throw, because it was like the only big highlight from that game. And they did it. It was cool. They had Aaron Rodgers talking on the sideline and Zach Wilson, and Rodgers is just saying, like, telling him where to throw it, basically, like over and over again.
So we need I asked Rodgers about it today, and this is kind of what I thought. So he said he's getting too much credit for that because, number one, he said he was telling them to throw bombs all day.
And they just focused on that one.
And number two, he said he didn't have access to Zach Wilson. He just had the coaches in his headset. So
that's what I was wondering.
So maybe the coaches said to Zach, like, Aaron wants you to go to Taylor, and that's why Zach was like, give Aaron credit for that. But by the way, Marissa said she's so upset about Strev, but she's all aboard the Tim Boyle hype train. So Marissa's offered her condolences.
What I was going to say was, like, and this is good. That's good context, because my thought watching it, the way they sold it was like, we can't even give Zach Wilson credit for this throw because Aaron's just like, throw it there. And he throws it and he hits him. But that makes sense. If he can't hear Aaron, then it's a thing. And
well, I'm sure Roger's saying let's bomb it out. Maybe they were like, all right, let's do it finally. And then so maybe he did have like influence over it, but didn't like call the play or whatever.
I would say for one preseason throw, it probably got a little too much attention, but they needed something in the game.
Yes.
So
it was kind of funny seeing how into the game Rodgers was on the sideline because he was like getting mad at penalties and he was like
him and Gardner mistakes.
I mean he looked the part of a coach because he both has some gray in his beard and he had the headset on. He just like he looks like he could be a coach. So I mean he pretty much is for this team, but yeah. All
right. I think we should each pick an MVP from each of these episodes as we make our way through. I'll go first this time. You can go first next time. How about that? We alternate.
All right.
So I was when I started watching the episode, I was like, Robert Saleh is going to be the MVP of this episode. And he started strong. He had the speech in the film room and they're showing all the guys locked in, and he tells the Eagle Crow story, which was awesome because we talked about it on the podcast last time. And he had made that comment about Eagles flying high. And I was like all in. I'm like, here we go. And during the game stuff from Saleh was great. Yeah. And Rodgers like giving him crap for being too optimistic. Like all of that was good. I think Saleh played really well, as we knew he would on Hard Knocks, right? Like there was no doubt he was going to kind of steal the show. But he's not my MVP. My MVP is the voice of Hard Knocks, Liev Schreiber, who I think stole the show. The helicopter entrance, like
the meta commentary he had. Meta commentary he had where he was Donovan, like, I thought it would have been fine if I just drove up, but they didn't think that would be dramatic enough. He did that. Like he's never even been on the show. I don't think that was wild.
No, and he said that as the first time he'd been to practice, and then like Rodgers is either faking it really well or actually is a big fan. Liev Schreiber's just great. I don't know. Were you a Ray Donovan fan?
The first few seasons, my parents loved that show, but he was in a lot of stuff. Yeah, like movie wise, he was in a crappy Wolverine movie as Sabretooth. I thought he was actually really good in that. He was in I think wasn't he in the movie Spotlight? He was in Spotlight.
Yep.
He was in some stuff in like the Manchurian Candidate. I think he was the bad guy in that, if I remember correctly. He's just like one of those for a while he was like kind of like a great character actor. Then he became like a little more when Ray Donovan came out. And he's been doing this forever. I mean, I remember when he was at practice, I didn't like see him, but people were talking about how Liev Schreiber was there. So you're like, all right, he's going to be on. And it was funny, like Rodgers telling the quarterbacks, go say hi to him. Go. Like Zach Wilson has no idea who Liev Schreiber is. That's for sure. And then he gave Hackett, he said to Hackett, like, why are you being such an asshole? Go talk to him.
Yeah, that was funny. That whole thing.
Hackett's like, I'm not being an asshole.
Saleh ended up talking to him for a little bit. But that was great. He had a little bit about how he was a cornerback back at Brooklyn Tech in high school and, dreaming of playing in the NFL as a 55-year-old. Like it was just, the whole thing was perfect. I thought it was something like that would be later in the show, but is he a Jets fan?
It probably should have been later in the show, honestly, because, they probably should be focusing more on Jet stuff in the beginning, but maybe they figured they'd get it out of the way now and then focus more on the Jets the rest of the way. If I'm going to give a runner-up.
Well, you get to pick your MVP.
Yeah,
you just can't go with Liev Schreiber.
So I'm tempted to say Garrett Wilson because I thought the part where he was talking trash to the defense when they lost the practice and he's like, how does that grass taste? He was like yelling that at them. I thought that was great. I'm going to go Jeff Ulbrich, actually. He looked, I know Saleh had some great speeches, but Ulbrich, I mean, he says the F word like every other word, but some of the, like, I tweeted one of his quotes. It was like, we're not going to let them gain a fucking yard or like whatever it is. Like just their mindset. You can see why their mindset is the way it is. The way he was talking about even Rodgers, like,
that was great talking about Rodgers.
Ulbrich, I think, is very likable. I think he got a bad rap with Jets fans that first year because the defense is really bad. I think he got a little too much blame for that. And I know some fans over the years have been upset only 2 years, but with the defensive line rotation. But I think it pays off ultimately when they're still good at the end of the year, especially with how good they are defensive line now. But yeah, Ulbrich for me was the MVP. You could argue Rodgers, I guess, but there might have been a little too much Rodgers ultimately.
It was too choreographed.
Honestly, Tenzel Smart deserves an honorable mention just because he had the quote of the day. So
he's the, what do they call it? The heat check winner.
Yeah, right? on the rewatchables from the Ringer, they call it the Deion Waiters Award, the guy who comes in and scores a bunch and microwave score. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the guy for that. He was great. And maybe we'll get more of that as we go throughout. So overall, I think I would give the episode a B. I think it was solid. I think it hit all the points.
I should say the one Jets. Another moment that we didn't bring up. It was even better on one Jets drive. But the Method Man moment where he like spoke to the team, that was really cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he quoted both ourselves. Yeah.
Brought up in the chat that there was actually, and I wonder if this was, we talked about the Jets having the right to edit these things. Not a mention of Dalvin Cook.
Yeah, I think that was intentional. I don't think they. Yeah. I think when that happened, unless they had signed him shortly after that, I don't think the Jets had any interest in, putting that dog and pony show on there. And I wonder if Cook thought it would just appear on there and that would help him or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but that was probably. I mean, maybe HBO started with it in there, but I'm sure the Jets, if they had added anything, no need to have that in there. All right. Yeah. Well, on to week 2. On to week 4 for the preseason, but on to week 2 of Hard Knocks, and we'll keep checking in. I think we went heavy here. We went like 15 minutes. I think this segment, as we go through, gets a little shorter.
Yeah, we'll probably more just like throwing awards out or whatever.
We'll give MVPs. We'll talk about a highlight or two because I mean it's interesting, it's fun, and hey, everyone loves TV and movie reviews, so we'll keep it going. But definitely not doing 15 minutes every episode. That'll take away from us talking about terrible things like golf and Ocean City food and all the stuff that people love, right?
Yeah, I mean,
by the way, we did not mention on the Ocean City episode, which I should have titled it that, Ocean City Coffee Company.
Oh yeah, I've been there once. I haven't been.
Oh really?
Yeah, because I wasn't drinking coffee when I was a kid going there. But yeah, I went there
right. A couple years ago. So there's 2 of them. There's one of them on off the boardwalk, but there's 2 on the boardwalk. And we got up, me and my wife got up and went for a walk every morning on the boardwalk, and they open at like 6 a.m. And on our way back, we would stop and get, of course, Zach, an iced coffee. Big. They have the big iced coffee and really good. So thumbs up for Ocean City Coffee Company.
Since we're talking non-football right now, just real quick, have you done Barbenheimer yet?
No, I haven't. Movies are not really.
Oh, you're not a movie guy? Oh, okay.
No, I love movies. We just.
Oh, you have a kid, yeah.
Getting a babysitter. It's probably going to be like a Barbenheimer stream situation.
Yeah. I saw Barbie. I haven't been able to see Oppenheimer yet. 3 hours at the theater is hard to like segment out for me these days because I'm just busy. But I saw Barbie. I was a fan. My girlfriend wasn't as much of a fan, so she did enjoy it. And I really want to see. I've been trying to see Oppenheimer. I thought about maybe even seeing it while I'm in Spartanburg, but I want to see it in IMAX, and it's always sold out. Ryan Gosling was amazing in Barbie. That guy should win an Oscar for that award. And Margot Robbie was awesome. It was a really funny movie. And yeah, so I'm a big movie guy. So I'd happily talk about movies every episode on this show if people wanted that.
Right, we can add that feature as we go. Yeah. Movie review. Unfortunately, we have to wait till the movie's been out for 3 months if you want us both to wait.
Well, there's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie that just came out and has really good reviews. And I kind of want to see it because it looks like it has some Into the Spider-Verse vibes. So,
anyway. So I traveled a bunch in July for work. So I had a bunch of flights. So I used it to like catch up on Marvel. I was so far behind on all the Marvel movies. So I got through a good amount of that.
What are you up to?
Which was good. So the Spider-Man movies aren't only the first one. Only the first new one is available on Disney Plus.
Oh yeah, because
it's there.
Because it's not.
But the last one I watched was the Doctor Strange multiverse movie, which is a little disappointing.
Yeah, it was disappointing. There's a lot. I was very hyped about that one going in, and was a little like I think it looks better on rewatch. But yeah, this MCU since Endgame has been a little bit of a struggle, is what I would say.
I did really enjoy Hawkeye, the show.
Hawkeye was fun. Didn't love the
ending. That was a lot of fun. It was weird watching it in July because it's this whole like holiday.
I'd say Secret Invasion is one of my least favorite Marvel things that has come out.
Yeah, I haven't done that.
Very much dislike that. And the Marvels, I think, is the next thing coming out. The trailer looks good, but I'm pessimistic based on everything that's happening. Although Loki season 2 also comes out soon, and Loki season 1.
I did watch Loki season 1.
That was one of my favorite things in the entire series. So there you go. That's the movie corner.
All right, everybody's caught up on the movies. Shockingly, the numbers of people that are watching us live right now has dipped a little bit, but I feel like the real can't wait hardcores.
Hey, we got to fill time.
Yeah, see, we got people jumping in. Big Blue Knights says WandaVision. Yeah, WandaVision and Hawkeye were both really good. Cool. All right, that'll do it. We're going to be back next week. I don't know what day yet. What's the schedule for the Jets? How does that shake out? What do you
think? Next week? So they're off on Monday, They have a regular practice Tuesday, joint practice with the Bucks on Wednesday and Thursday, I think.
Let's do Thursday because I'm traveling Wednesday.
All right. Yeah, we should be able to do that. So we'll plan for Thursday, guys, unless the Jets.
All right, we'll be back.
Cook.
Thank you to Marissa for joining the chat. If you want to produce the audio version of this podcast, Marissa, feel free. I can just file over to you. But otherwise, we'll get her on here soon, actually speaking. Maybe we'll get to meet the baby on the air. We'll see. Thanks to everybody for tuning in, and we will talk to you again soon on the Can't Wait podcast.